The Globe and Mail has a shocking story today about abuse of the Indigenous procurement program by the Canadian Healthcare Agency. According to a whistleblower, the government was putting in place tight constraints on the work of auditors as soon as they started to identify serious problems. The government was warned by auditors, and their response to those warnings was to make life more difficult for the auditors. Minister, you told my colleague Michael Barrett that you only heard about allegations against Canadian Healthcare Agency this weekend. Is that correct?
No, I did not. I told your colleague that I was made aware of the auditor's concerns overall about the program this weekend, and that it was deeply distressing to me, and that I.
But you were previously aware of his allegations against Canadian Healthcare Agency?
What I'm saying is that that was the first I heard of Mr. Hartle's allegations.
When did you first become aware of concerns about the indigeneity of this partnership involving the Canadian Healthcare Agency? When did you first become aware of that?
The department routinely reviews, as you've heard before.
When did you first become aware? It's not about the department. When did you first become aware?
As I said, this weekend, I too heard about what was in the Globe and Mail, and I was.
But when did you
concerned.
first become aware of concerns about the Canadian Healthcare Agency?
I think you've asked questions about this company before, have you not?
So when did you first become aware of it, though?
So the first time I became aware of it was, I don't have an exact date, but a few months ago.
A few months ago. Minister, you said in response to my questions that, quote, I would say that it was an abuse of being on the list without adequate representation. You said this about Canadian Healthcare Agency back at the end of October, and you've tried to represent the facts in a very different way to my colleague, Mr. Barrett, which is disappointing to say the least. The AFN has said that...
I could respond to that because that is actually putting words in my mouth, and that is not what I said.
Can I have the time, Mr. Chair? I've got another question.
So, Mr. Ingenious, you do have the time, and the Minister will have an opportunity to respond to that.
Okay, I have 3 minutes left. The AFN says that you're not hitting your 5% target. It's closer to 1%. That's what Chief Joanna Bernard told the Government Operations Committee. Is the AFN correct?
Not according to our records, but what I can say is that I understand the concern, and I'm actually, as I said to your colleague, glad that the Conservative Party is fighting so hard to protect this 5% procurement target. This is good news. It means that we all want this program to work better, including the AFN.
You're not answering my question, and you were somewhat inaccurate in your response with Mr. Barrett. So you don't agree with the AFN, I understand.
I would say that our data is different than the AFN's, and that, in fact, in some departments we are exceeding the procurement target of 5%.
You're either hitting it or you're not. It's not as if the AFN is experiencing things differently, right? You're either hitting the 1% or you're hitting a 5%.
Well, what I would say is that our data demonstrates that we are actually hitting our procurement target amongst
your data
a number
also
of
shows,
Madam
Minister, that you're dramatically purging the Indigenous business list. That since 2022, you've taken over 1,000 companies off that list. You've taken over 100 companies off this year alone. And I'm trying to square the fact that, on the one hand, not a single person or company has been penalized for Indigenous identity fraud, but on the other hand, you're dramatically purging the list, which suggests that there's some people on that list that shouldn't be on that list. How do you square the fact that Indigenous leaders across the board are saying that abuse of this program is rampant? You're taking many companies off the list, and yet nobody's been held accountable for Indigenous identity fraud.
Well, actually, what I would say is that Indigenous peoples are saying that economic reconciliation and the work of the Government of Canada in terms of its procurement target is actually changing realities for Indigenous businesses across the country. But
Sorry,
I would
Minister,
say
could
that
you just
I agree
answer the
with
question?
You, Mr.
Is it acceptable that nobody's been held accountable for Indigenous identity fraud by your government?
What I would say is it's great that you care about this program
Could you answer
to the degree
question?
that you do. Because what we all agree,
is it acceptable to you that nobody has been held accountable?
I can't answer the question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carr.
Just a problem we've run into previously, but very difficult for us to have translation services provided adequately when there's talking back and forth. So perhaps we could just resettle things. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the same point of order, I agree with Mr. Carr. I'm trying to ask questions, and the minister is not answering them, and I think should be brought to order. I've got 30 seconds left. And I'd just like to know whether she thinks it's acceptable.
Garnett, before doing that, I just want to remind members here not to talk over the witnesses. We want to make sure we're avoiding the crosstalk. It makes it very difficult for the interpreters to do their work, and for members that have challenges hearing as well. So just want to remind members to do that.
Et, Monsieur le Président, c'était les deux voix que j'ai entendues. Alors.
So I heard many voices.
30 seconds, I'll try one more time, Minister. Nobody has been held accountable by your government for Indigenous identity fraud. Meanwhile, you've taken Canadian Healthcare Agency off the list, and you can't tell me why. You've taken Dalian Enterprises off the list, and you can't tell me why. You've taken over 1,000 companies off the list, yet nobody's been held accountable for it. Is it acceptable to you that not a single company has ever been held accountable for Indigenous identity fraud by your government?
It appears to me that I have answered your question, and I have answered your question repeatedly. But I will tell you that removals from the list are, for many reasons, that can be quite benign. For example, businesses could be closed. They could be non-responsive to requests from the department.
1,000 businesses are suddenly non-responsive?
Changes in the business ownership structure. There could be a number of different reasons.
Okay.
And
Could you provide a breakdown of those reasons for each of those companies?
So,
Appel au règlement.
Appel au règlement, Monsieur Carr.
Point of order. Yes, again, it's very, very difficult to hear in both official languages. We do have Francophone members and other people listening in both languages. So, Chair, I hope that our colleagues can try to apply the rules in a better way. Thank you. Mr. Carr, the time has run out for Mr. Genuous.
Opportunity to finish her answer, and then we'll move on to the next questioner.
It's affirming that the Conservative Party agrees that the 5% target is so important that we must ensure that the way that we do this affirms Indigenous identity. But it is also clear that the Conservative Party has no idea what to do about this problem. We do, and we're going to take control.